So the other day I did a video on Mormon culture where the three Mormons were talking about how sometimes people can be judgmental and all that junk. I didn't actually finish the video. There was a lot more to it. So consider this part 2 of my video series, Can Mormonism Be Reformed? Okay, let's get into it. So here's the thing. On the podcast, I gave 3 examples in which people are indirectly responsible for what their followers do. I feel like this is an important point to drive home. Calling for violence is illegal, obviously. Telling people that you think this or that person should be assassinated is against the law. We live in a civilized society. Most of the time, we don't get people outright calling for violence like that. But creating an us versus them mentality is more than enough to drive some people to violence. Mormons create an us versus them mentality. Jehovah's Witnesses create an us versus them mentality. This is an extremely important distinction to make. I blamed the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses when my niece's boyfriend started calling me a stupid piece of garbage, saying I knew the truth and I turned away from it, saying I was worthless and all that. That's the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses' fault, at least a little bit, for creating that us versus them mentality. But if a Jehovah's Witness showed up at a county fair and attacked people there, I wouldn't blame Jehovah's Witnesses for that, at least not as much. Here's why. Jehovah's Witnesses have always been anti-violence, anti-gun, anti-bomb, anti-weapon, anti-military, complete pacifists. If somebody goes out and attacks somebody else in the name of Jehovah's Witnesses, that is logically contrary to what they stand for, and what they've stood for all along. I could blame Jehovah's Witnesses leadership for creating the us versus them mentality, but I couldn't blame them for the attack. On the other hand, if a Mormon or a Jehovah's Witness boss fires a gay person just because they're gay and no other reason, I could blame the leadership for that. That's a direct correlation between what the organization stands for and says and what its followers are doing. I made a video called How to Troll Jehovah's Witnesses a while back. In that video, I talked about how I remembered what it was like to knock on doors and have dogs released on me, and that we shouldn't treat people like that. We should treat them like humans. We're working against the leadership, not against the poor suckers on the inside. I've always had a thread of pacifism, nonviolence, and decorum running through everything I put out. Sure, I get pissed off. I talk about how badly the group fucked up my life and how I want to bring them down. That's very true. But when they were banned in Russia, I did a video about why they shouldn't be banned. I talked about freedom of religion and how we can't ban thoughts. We can't take people's fundamental rights away, even if we hate how an organization takes those rights and uses them as a weapon against people. Now, that being said, I do believe in free speech, to the core, more than anything. But blaming them for creating a toxic environment and jailing them are two different things. We should be free from legal consequences if we want to talk about absolutely anything, but we shouldn't expect to be free from social consequences. If the Watchtower Society does or says something really messed up, I'm going to report on it. I'm going to talk about it. And thanks to freedom of speech, there's nothing they can do to stop me. The irony in all this is that I would die to protect their right to free speech, but they would die to stop mine. Anyways, the point here is that I can and do blame Mormonism for creating an us versus them mentality with outsiders, or with the types of people the 3 Mormons were talking about in the last video. People with long hair or tattoos or whatever else. If mistreatment like that is a real problem in the Mormon Church, I blame the leadership. They hold full responsibility for not breaking up that mentality. Sure, maybe they mention at a conference once a year, yeah, you guys shouldn't be judgmental, and then move on. That isn't good enough. If it's a widespread problem, widespread enough for this group of kids to be talking about it on their podcast thing, the Mormon leadership has failed. We need a campaign to come out and change attitudes. The leadership has a lot of sway with these people. They control them in a lot of different ways. They push this destructive narrative that people should wear this or do that, or never say this thing or that thing. And anybody who breaks from that mold is ostracized and mistreated. First, they should stop pushing people to fit into this little mold. It's brainwashy and harmful. But if they're going to do that, at least put that brainwashy method to good use and encourage people to avoid being judgmental or violent. As a person with sway, as a person with authority or position, as somebody to whom lots of people listen, it's my obligation to make sure people know I'm anti-violence. It's my obligation to make sure people know I think they should treat Jehovah's Witnesses with respect. We're going after their bad policies and philosophy, not the individual members. They're people just like you and me who haven't found their way out yet. We want to go after the ideas and chastise the people coming up with those ideas, especially the ones who orchestrate full-scale propaganda campaigns to spread these bad ideas, not the people on the inside. There is an important difference. Okay, now that I've gotten through that, hopefully some of you see my point of view on this. If they're going to create an us versus them mentality, then I'm going to blame them when something goes wrong and somebody attacks somebody else over it. Plain and simple. They can't breathe down the neck of every adherent to the philosophy to make sure they don't pull any triggers. But they're the ones who pushed the climate in that direction and keep it there. Now, as a fun little thought experiment, why don't you guys see if Trump is to blame in the same way for creating a climate in which a bomber might be motivated to send out pipe bombs to some of Trump's enemies, like Robert De Niro. The guy isn't even in politics. It was strictly Trump's enemies who were targeted. I'm not taking a position one way or the other on this. I'm just asking for input on it. Leave a comment to give me your thoughts on it. I'll give them a read later. Okay, now let's finish the video from the Three Mormons. I think we're about 5 minutes in.
If you're offended by something within the church, chances are it probably has more to do with the culture than the actual doctrine. Right. And that is unfortunate. It shouldn't happen, but like Kwaku mentioned, judging people it's a human thing, not just a Mormon thing.
We believe we're the true church, right? We do hold ourselves to a standard. I mean, we believe we're the true church of Jesus Christ, that Jesus Christ is literally at the head of this church. And so people expect, like, oh, this is the true church, and the people are going to be better people. They're going to be nicer. And I wish that was the case. I wish there weren't crummy Mormons out there but there are. And I think to comfort me, I like to look at Jesus' 12 apostles when he called them. Right. Even they didn't get along sometimes. Some of them left. Some of his 12 apostles knew he was the savior of the world. And they're like, yeah, I got stuff to do, right? So, I think just because you can have a knowledge that is so sure of Christ and so sure of his gospel, and you can still be a jerk.
Right.
Sure, that's true enough, I guess. There are jerks everywhere. Except think about this. Have you ever heard a story of a Jehovah's Witness bringing a gun to a public place and killing people? Have you ever heard of a Jehovah's Witness taking part in an act of extreme public violence? I think it might happen, but it's so insanely rare, because that's part of their core doctrine. Make war no more. Guns are bad. Getting rid of your anger problems is required if you want to be Jehovah's Witness. Well, actually, more accurately, redirecting your anger toward worldly people is required. They're okay with you hating people as long as it's the right people. Anyways, the point here is that the people in Mormonism live and operate within the bounds of what's acceptable by the leadership. And as a result, we've got tons of Mormons who are judgmental and hateful. The leadership's decisions are directly related to the members' actions and behavior.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think if we really focus on what God's purpose is for us, is to bring to pass immortality and eternal life of man. That's why he made the church, is to help us get there. Yeah. And then that's why the gospel exists. And so if we can ignore these cultural aspects and focus on what the core of the gospel is, then we'll be happy. We'll enjoy our experience, and we'll be able to help other people. And so we really need to be careful when we see other people maybe not living how we think. Because sometimes that happens, it's the judging. Oh, yeah. That happens a lot. And if we don't think people are living how the gospel, how I think they should be living it, or if I'm not living the gospel how someone else thinks I should be living it, we just remember that the purpose is to progress, to become like God. We're never done. We've never, okay, check, we've finished, we've lived the gospel.
Yeah, it's never.
We're always living it. Mm-hmm. And so if someone's not living how you think they should live, well, at least they're on the path. Yeah. And at least they're trying, and we're all in different spots. So I think that's just something we should really keep in mind when it comes to what you think the church should be.
Yeah.
As long as you're just trying to live the commandments and progress, then you're in the right spot.
Oh wow, that is not where I thought he was going with that one. I thought for sure he was going to talk about how God is love and we should imitate that. Good for him for not giving such a cliche answer. But that isn't how a lot of Mormons feel about it. Obviously, that's basically what they're saying in this video. Most Mormons have a problem where they like to judge people. The problem here is that people believe God to be who they want God to be. The Westboro Baptist Church believes God hates everybody. Jehovah's Witnesses believe God loves everybody, but he's going to brutally murder them if they don't love him back. Some denominations think gay people deserve to be tortured for eternity, and some denominations think Jesus himself might have been gay. The Bible has enough variety in it that it can be used to support literally any position you want it to. So ultimately, it comes down to the church leaders' interpretation of the Bible. How do they think people should act? Obviously, the Mormon leadership doesn't feel like the Bible or the Book of Mormon were serious about being loving and non-judgmental, or they would push that as a core, fundamental part of the religion. Just like Jehovah's Witnesses pushing being anti-war. Like I said in my last video, I respect that they're trying to reform it from the inside. I respect that they're trying to push people to change their attitudes to one that's less aggressive or hateful. But I really don't think they're going to succeed until the leadership takes part and starts changing the culture from the top down.
I mean, I personally have walked in and seen my roommates watching a movie that, like, I don't like, and I'm like, oh, I wouldn't watch that. And I, like, make it very, I don't know, I need to work on that, but I make it very clear, like, oh, what are you guys watching this? Oh. And then I go to my room, slam the door or something, And it's like, and it's not that, I mean, unless it's, like, obviously explicit and bad, but it's like, it's not a bad movie, it's just one I don't think you should watch.
Yeah.
That's me projecting what I like my personal rules on somebody, but that doesn't mean it's a commandment.
Oh yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses used to do that all the time. Then they'd report it to the elders. They'd tell them that this person or that person was watching an R-rated movie. Then they'd have a local needs talk on media and R-rated movies and why we shouldn't be poisoning our mind with the world's entertainment or some shit like that. But with Mormons, I'm honestly surprised to hear this kid say that, because he was pretty much commanded to by the leadership. Take a listen to this.
A lonely, confused young man gets addicted to pornography. His roommates know, but they do nothing to help him. He stops going to church, and there is darkness in his eyes, and has fostered a social stigma against people who speak up in the face of evil. The enemy whispers, don't get involved. It's not your problem. Don't tell, you'll be a tattletale. Oh, brothers and sisters, don't leave the wounded on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's famously about telling on somebody who touches themselves. But they put out similar stuff on other subjects too. And the key takeaway for that video is this. Tell on people. Confront them if you see them doing something you don't like or something you feel is wrong. Or alternatively, just tell the church's leadership. That's the kind of environment they're fostering. That's the kind of thing they're encouraging. They aren't out there saying, you don't know what this guy has going on in his life. Don't harass him or judge him or report him to the elders. Try to be a crying shoulder for him. Hear him out. Be a friend. No, they're not saying any of that. They're saying, report it to the church leadership so we can put a stop to it. Watch out for that kind of thing. Don't let people get away with it. So really, when this dude says...
That's me projecting what I like my personal rules on somebody, but that doesn't mean it's a commandment.
He's doing exactly what the Mormon Church wants him to do. He's living up to their standards. Maybe Joseph Smith himself didn't say, be judgmental, but that's the goal. They want people to shame others into submission. I respect the goal of trying to reform the Mormon Church, but I honestly view it as a lost cause. The leadership obviously likes it the way it is, or they would have stopped putting out propaganda like that long ago. One can assume they still feel that way when they continue to release information that highlights that same point over and over again. Oh yeah, but tell me again how they say once a year at the General Conference that people shouldn't be judgmental. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of unfortunate aspects of Mormon culture that we need to do better at. But there are also great things about Mormon culture. We've got green jello.
Great. I have green jello too. You have to give me something I won't get on the outside, which is literally nothing, FYI. Anyways, did you hear them say...
There are a lot of unfortunate aspects of Mormon culture that we need to do better at.
That's actually them criticizing the leadership. I don't think they realize they're doing it. I think they believe they're criticizing the members. But like I said, this is the environment the leadership fosters. The culture is a direct result of the decisions the leadership makes, and has been continuing to make for the past 200 years. So why don't you just throw the whole thing out and go secular? I haven't had my leaders subtly influence me to rat on people, lie, manipulate, or any of that other stuff since I left Jehovah's Witnesses. Of course, that's at least due in part to the fact that I don't have any spiritual leaders now. It's really nice. You should try it. Okay, that's all I've got for you guys. This is the last video I'm going to release before I go to FFRFCon in San Francisco, California. So hopefully I get to see some of you guys there. I'm super excited to go. I'll be hanging out there with Holy Kool-Aid and Genetically Modified Skeptic. It's going to be the shit. Don't forget to follow me on Patreon, all social media, Discord, and check out my podcast and my science channel. Thanks for watching, guys.